Ryse Son of Rome is a third-person action-adventure hack-and-slash video game developed by Crytek and published by Microsoft Studios. It was released on November 22nd, 2013 as a release title for the Xbox One and was released on October 10th, 2014 for Microsoft Windows by Crytek and Deep Silver. Set in an alternative version of Rome, Ryse follows the life of Roman centurion Marcus Titus as he becomes one of the leaders in the Roman legion. The first thing I want to talk about is the story. I don't want to ruin the whole plot as it's a very linear game, but the basic premise is that Ryse Son of Rome is set in an alternative version of Rome, like I said before. The game starts with Marcus, who you'll play for the entire game, leading the defence of Rome against the oncoming attack of the Celtic barbarians led by Boudica. Marcus hands a small, non-scripted sack to a subordinate and with instructions to display it from an elevated position, then helps secure the Roman Empire. Nero is in a private safe room. The rest of the game is an extended flashback depicting Marcus's story up to this point. After playing the game and then watching the footage back, I realised that I loved how the story was structured and it made for a really interesting experience overall. I think the story and graphics are the strongest aspect of the game, and I think it's down to the cinematic experience that the creators were going for. However, this does have a downside to it, but I will circle back to them later on. So, to give you a bit of context in the story, Marcus begins his story as a soldier having just successfully completed his training, who is about to leave Rome to serve his duty in the peaceful Alexandria. Just before his deployment, he enjoys a return to his family in Rome, where he meets his father, Leonidas, a former general and current member of the Roman Senate. Marcus's visit is cut short by a barbarian incursion. A running battle through the streets of Rome results in the death of his parents and a younger sister. Commander Vitalian, a friend of Marcus's, transfers Marcus to his legion and promises Marcus vengeance for his murdered family. Vitalian leads the legion to Britain, but the fleet is ambushed off the coast where Marcus is then forced to lead a counterattack. In general, the story is really engaging and does not get boring. I've actually been to Rome and learned about the Roman Empire and how it came to be and how it was eventually wiped out, and the story did a really good job of making it realistic as possible, although this story is completely fiction. Fun fact, by the way, but in real life, back in the Roman days, the men that used to fight in the Colosseum weren't actually killed. They were used to fight until one man couldn't physically get up, and then they'd stop the fight. And this was basically because the men were owned by, obviously, people that were higher than them and could afford to buy them. And they were worth a lot of money, so people would bet on the fights. And the people that owned them obviously wouldn't want them being killed as they were worth a lot of money. And obviously, if they wanted to sell them in the future, then that would kind of damage their investment, so to speak. Anyway, I got sidetracked. So a lot of the main story happens in cutscenes, which I found did take away from the experience sometimes as you watch as kind of things happen instead of being able to do it yourself. This does become a bit of a problem later on in the game, but I'll talk about it in a bit. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, and it didn't ruin the whole experience, but it just was, I think, certain moments would have been more satisfying if you'd got to kind of interact and have it as interactive cutscenes rather than just cutscenes. But anyway, I don't want to go on too much about the story because, like I said, it's a linear game, so if I say too much it would just ruin it. But in my opinion, the story is really, really engaging and definitely, other than the graphics, is the strongest aspect of the game. So next up is kind of gameplay and general impressions. Right off the bat, I'm just going to get the best thing about this game hands down out of the way, which was easily the graphics, like I said before. You can tell they worked really hard on the graphics, and it's still better looking game 7 years later than some of the 1 or 2 year old games that I've played recently. I think this was really helped by the setting choice, and it just made everything look beautiful, and like I say, it was easily the best part of the game. I'll put some kind of gameplay in to kind of show you what I mean, but yeah, for me it's the best part of it. In terms of gameplay, so the story focuses around Marcus, so as you can expect, the gameplay revolves around Marcus using his sword to strike enemies and the shield to deflect attacks. Execution sequences are featured in the game as well, with quick time events that are added to the combat to keep things fresh. The game also features a cooperative multiplayer mode where you fight waves of enemies in numerous maps. However, for the purpose of this review, I'll be talking about the main story. Just on the point of quick time events as well, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the big story moments happen in cutscenes. However, you don't actually get to do anything, you just have to watch it kind of unfold, and there's a lot of emphasis with this game on the kind of quick time events, so I just wish that they had the cutscenes as part of you having to interact with it. Basically, I just felt that there were some moments where it would have been a lot more satisfying if, like, as you played, you had more control over it. I found as well some of the weird things about this game was the camera angle. Obviously, because they've tried to make the game really, really cinematic, And it worked quite well with the gameplay, as it made it more immersive, but it also at the same time made it really hard to see at times, and you couldn't really see the enemies when they were behind you. It reminded me a lot of the Batman Arkham games and the combat in that. However, it's nowhere near as good as that game, because what they did in the Batman Arkham series is they pulled the camera back so you could see the enemies around you, whereas in this game the camera is really close up, so you physically cannot see people attack you from behind, and it's almost like a bit of luck. You can minimize this by kind of using the right stick and turning it so that people can't see you, so that you can see the enemies a bit better, but it's still not perfect, and I feel like the camera would have benefited if it was zoomed out a little bit. But yeah, I guess my point is the camera angle took me out of the experience at times, and it did become frustrating as I played, because early on I died quite often. So moving on, I played this game on my original Xbox One console, and the frame rate was an issue at times. It often dropped during cutscenes and sometimes in combat. I noticed it more as I got more kills, but it never caused me to die or get hit for that matter. However, the controls for the game don't register sometimes, which did cause me to die a few times. For example, when trying to dodge, the game would sometimes get stuck and wouldn't let Marcus roll to avoid the incoming attacks. It was fine once I got used to it, but it's still something that was really weird and annoying. Something else that was weird as well was the arrangement of controls, which really confused me. I don't know why, and other people might not have this problem, but with combat games or games that are focused on kind of these fighting mechanics, I'm used to the buttons kind of going top up. So with what I mean by that is you have the attacking buttons near the bottom of the controller and the like counter at the top, so normally it's like Y, whereas in this game the counter button was A and the attack button was X, which is normal, and then the dodge button is roll, and then you have the like heavy attack as Y, and I just found it a bit confusing, as having the counter button being so high on the controller, like, you know, so low on the controller as A instead of Y. It just took ages for me to get the hang of it. I feel like I'm constantly bashing on this game, and it may sound like I didn't enjoy my time with it, but that just isn't the case at all. I just think that these things are important in a hack and slash game, as the gameplay needs to be on point for the experience to kind of to be a fluid experience, in my opinion. Obviously, the game's combat puts much focus on flow and fluidity of fights. In other words, building big combinations whilst avoiding taking any damage. Having done a bit of background research on the game, I found that the producers wanted a rhythm-styled combat system on the main mechanic, and the artificial intelligence of enemies were actually designed to break and disrupt players' flow. In order to keep the flow going, they had to kind of introduce the execution mechanic, which I think was a really good idea. Otherwise the combat would have got really boring and really repetitive really quickly. But this just made the game feel more brutal, and it kind of went hand in hand with those Roman times where the way that they killed each other was just brutal, like I say. The gameplay was also very linear, like the story, which I guess makes sense. Which I don't mind, as the story is usually better when it's linear, but I do wish there was more freedom of choice. I remember there was one scene where I had to fight a boss, and I saw something that I could interact with before, but in this case it wouldn't let me interact with it. I basically threw my arrow at it, however the game wanted this fight to happen, so it couldn't reach what I was trying to do, and it wouldn't let me lift my camera up enough so I could aim it. This disappointed me a bit. I know, like I said, the game's linear, but a bit of player agency is still really important in my opinion, as it keeps things fresh for the player. Just on the point of boss fights as well, I thought they were pretty poor, to be honest. I was expecting more in terms of the combat, but you can't even use the focus ability, which was really silly, as this is one of the big things that you level up throughout the game, so the fact that you couldn't even use this in boss battles was really silly. And again, none of them were memorable, and I found myself getting bored during these boss fights, as you just kind of wait for a certain opening so you could strike, and then the damage that you actually did was minimal. And what I mean by that is you waited for the NPCs to basically come at you so that you could dodge them or counter them, and then you just hit them once or twice, and you could literally only hit them once or twice, and then you had to go back and wait. So this kind of made the game a bit repetitive. Something else that I found as well, the cutscenes are also really annoying, like I mentioned earlier, and this was because would just go from gameplay to cutscene and then back to gameplay for like 30 seconds and then back to another cutscene, and it was really, really jarring. I found myself kind of a bit perplexed and confused, to be honest, because you'd kind of be having this battle and then it suddenly cuts black and then you'd be in a cutscene, and then the cutscene would last for like 5 seconds and then it would go back to the gameplay. It's almost like they wanted it to have the cutscene in the gameplay, if that makes sense. Like, so like the person talks to you in the gameplay, but for some reason it just didn't work. Cutting back and forth just really disrupts the whole rhythm of the game, which was really ironic because that's what they were going for. This kind of leads me into my next point, which is the performance of the game. I don't normally include a section in my reviews of performance, however I ran into problems, so I feel like I probably should mention it. I already mentioned the fact that the frame rate is a bit of an issue sometimes, and I wish that this was the only performance issue I found, but unfortunately it's not. Maybe it was just my personal experience, or maybe it was my Xbox that was playing up. It might be the system that was struggling to run it, but I don't see how that would be the case, as this was a launch title for the game, so that you'd think that there would be all that new power, that it'd be fine. And it was literally the first game that you could play on the Xbox. Anyway, the issue that I had was where I would get a black screen during a cutscene, which meant I basically had to reset the game once, and I also had a time where it caused a crash. Luckily the save checkpoints on this game are really, really good, so if your game does crash it doesn't matter because it saves so much, and it doesn't take you long to get back into where you were to continue. It's just a bit annoying. So the next section I want to talk about is the reception it receives at launch. So Ryse and Rome received mixed reviews. Aggregating review website Metacritic gave the Xbox version 60% out of 100 based on 77 reviews. The game's visuals received critical acclaim, which kind of aligns with what I said. Brian Albert from IGN thought that Ryse would be the perfect title for people to show off their console due to its high graphic quality, and he also praised the game's wide variety of environment and fluid character animation. For me it was like a 6-hour movie which had a really decent plot and was well paced, and it kept it interesting even with the weird cutscene structure and the frame rate issues. But I got it free and would definitely recommend if you need a game to play at the moment, as I know there aren't any kind of new games coming out, and with lockdown it's really boring. The combat is also satisfying with plenty of weight and impact to it, and again it was very linear, and the game does encourage you to kind of use these moves, but at the same time it does kind of discourage any form of exploration. You basically just walk in straight lines to move the plot forward. I don't know if you've ever played it, but I had a Xena Warrior Princess on PlayStation 2 when I was a kid, and this game reminded me so much of that, but just with way better graphics and gameplay. So if you want an idea of kind of what it's like, that would be my comparison. Just moving on as well, so I found another article from Shoemaker. I don't know who they are, but they basically said that they thought the game lacked both variety and depth. And then there was Mark Walton from GameStop, who thought that the game's design was too linear and that the game discouraged any form of exploration, which kind of just backs up my point. But in my opinion it's not that bad. It's not like, it is a weakness, but it's also a strength, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just wanted to give you a few kind of viewpoints from critics at the time to basically give you an idea of what this game is like. I think 60 out of 100 is really harsh. I don't think it's that bad. I personally would give it a higher score, because once you get the hang of the combat it is really satisfying, and the animations that they put in are really realistic. Obviously the graphics are amazing as well, and the story itself was engaging, and the campaign is only like 6 hours, so I think if you've got time and you're looking for a game to play, I would definitely recommend this game. So that's going to be the end of the review. If you like this video, please like, subscribe and comment. If you've played the game, let me know what you think in the comment section, and until next time,